African Export-Import Bank, the trade finance bank for Africa.
Hello and welcome to the inauguration of the headquarters building of the Africa Export-Import Bank and the investiture of Dr. Benedict Oramah as president of the Afrexim Bank. This two-day event is taking place in the historic city of Cairo, Egypt. I'm Esther Awuni. High-ranking African government officials, heads of international organizations and the business community at the inauguration of the headquarters building of the Africa Export-Import Bank. The two-day ceremony kicks off with keynote and welcome statements.
Today, we are gathered here to witness a momentous and historic event, which has a lot of significance and highlights the impressive growth, resilience, and the enduring success path the bank has taken since inception over 22 years ago.
The relevance of our institution cannot be overemphasized, particularly at a time when commodity prices have declined below the levels seen some 12 years ago, and access to trade finance continues to be a challenge for African corporates, and at a time when more than ever there is an urgent call for the continent to accelerate the process of structural transformation.
Today is a new landmark in the life journey of Afrexim Bank, the bank that was established in accordance with the Abuja Agreement in 1993 by African governments and private sector for the good purpose of funding and strengthening intra and extra-African trade. Egypt is proud to host the headquarters of this important African economic and financial institution.
Afrexim Bank has a 22-year history of promoting intra-African trade. This is highlighted in a short video.
Credit, risk-bearing, trade information and advisory services. When the bank was set up, there was a need for Africa to have its own continental Exim Bank. Across the world, national export and import banks have always been key catalysts in the promotion of cross-border trade and investment, creating wealth and employment opportunities in many countries. Africa is not an exception. Since it began its operations in 1994, the bank has focused on leveraging resources to help Africa meet its trade financing needs. Whether it be in the area of supporting the development of trade facilitating infrastructure, providing critical trade finance guarantees, or supporting African private sectors operating to grow their businesses, Afrexim Bank has been there. The bank's portfolio of financial and advisory products and services has spurred increased value addition to Africa's commodity exports and raised competitiveness of African business operators, building capacity and strengthening Africa's enterprises in their globalization efforts. Afrexim Bank has mobilized more than $30 billion into Africa since inception through the syndicated loan market, working with some 35 banks from Europe, Middle East, Africa and Asia. The bank's export credit agency loan facility has enabled several of Africa's leading airlines to strengthen their fleets in order to compete more favorably on the global stage. Afrexim Bank has also been successful in developing innovative initiatives that help break down trade barriers and strengthen key sectors responsible for growth and employment in Africa. Afrexim Bank's Construction and Tourism Linked Relay Financing Facility, or Contour, is a tourism-focused initiative launched to boost the construction of world-class hotels and holiday resorts in Africa in order to help turn the continent into a prime business and leisure tourism destination.
After the video, officials of the bank take guests on a guided tour to show them the new boardroom, conference facilities, and the bank's new knowledge center. A book titled Foundation of Structured Trade Finance, written by Benedict Oramah, is also launched. The foundation stone for this $14 million 12-floor Afrexim Bank headquarters was laid on the 18th of December 2003, and construction was completed in May 2007. Assistant Foreign Minister of African Affairs and representative to Egypt's Prime Minister, Mohamed Idris, formally unveils a symbolic plaque to commemorate the inauguration of the building. In the last 22 years, Afrexim Bank has been working to address the trade finance gap and low level of intra-African trade on the continent. And this is what two former Afrexim Bank presidents discussed extensively at the inauguration event's panel discussion themed From Vision to Reality, the building of a global multilateral Exim Bank.
My idea was to make Afrexim Bank as a window like IFC will be for the World Bank, so that it is our second window. But we could not do that.
What you see is that total global trade has risen faster than African trade, which means that the quotient, the proportion of African trade, the share of African trade in world trade is declining.
The Africa Export-Import Bank says it is positioning itself to play a bigger role in the continent's economic integration. The significance of the new building and the bank's achievements so far is appreciated by a former Nigerian Minister of State for Finance and two former presidents of the bank.
It's good to see a small institution that has developed into a big, well-established giant that represents trying to promote intra-African trade. So it's a very satisfying occasion for me, 22 years later, to see what that idea has been built into, especially the concrete achievement of building the head office here in Cairo.
It took us 6 years, from 1987 to 1993, to really have complete the journey in setting up the institution.
It enables us to recognize that somebody is taking the baton in the context of a relay race and must add a new element to the challenges of the environment. The new president will now have to define his special niche and the contribution he intends to make to continue the process of growing the bank and its business.
In the past, trade between Francophone and Anglophone countries was poor. However, with the gradual integration of African economies over the years, there's been an improvement. The Commercial Bank of Cameroon's Chief Executive Officer, Martin Njanga, would like to see more progress being made in this area.
We need to develop the market. And to develop the market, what we think is the most important thing to do is most of the time try to open the frontiers, open the borders, get the people to work together like Afrexim Bank is doing now, to bring us to discuss, to get each other understand what he can get from the other country within Africa. That's the main thing. But as of now, the business between Central Africa, West Africa, or Anglophone countries and Francophone countries is very low.
In part 2, after the break, we'll bring you the formal investiture of Dr. Benedict Oramah as president of the Africa Export-Import Bank. Join us again. On the 13th of June this year, shareholders of the Africa Export-Import Bank appointed Dr. Benedict Oramah to be the next president, making him the third president to serve the bank since its establishment in 1993. It's day 2 and guests are seated for the handover ceremony. The event begins with keynote addresses and statements led by the outgoing president of the Africa Export-Import Bank, Jean-Louis Ekra. Guests are shown a short video of some of Afrexim Bank's achievements. This is followed by a poem on leadership and development.
The African Export-Import Bank, Afrexim Bank, was established in October 1993 as a Pan-African financial institution for the purpose of accelerating the growth of trade in Africa. The idea of creating Africa's own Exim Bank dates back to the late 1980s in the wake of the global economic downturn, which resulted in serious challenges to African economies in financing their international trade. From the late 1970s to the mid-1980s, the global economy weakened considerably. The slowdown in growth rate in OECD member countries dented demand for Africa's export commodities, resulting in low export revenues for many commodity-dependent African countries. This situation created a perception of high uncertainty regarding Africa's economic environment. Most financial institutions, therefore, reduced their lending activities in Africa and imposed stringent borrowing conditions, fearing massive default on debt obligations. It was with this in mind that the idea of a continental trade finance institution was conceived in 1987 by African ministers of finance.
2015 AD. The first female president of the Arab Republic of Egypt starts her very first day of school. She is half Arab, half Nubian, and Muslim. She counts stars with her father, and she prays for the children washing up on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea. 1987 AD, the idea for the African Export-Import Bank is born. Thomas Isidore Noel Sankara is killed. Burkina Faso means land of the upright man.
It's now time for the highlight of today's event, the investiture of Benedict Oramah as new president of Afrexim Bank. The swearing-in ceremony is conducted by the bank's AGM chairman, Alexander Chikwanda.
Benedict Oramah,
recently appointed president of the African Export-Import Bank.
Recently appointed the president of the African Export-Import Bank.
Solemnly declare and undertake before the chairman of the general meeting and before the members of the board of directors.
Solemnly declare and undertake before the chairman of the general meeting and before the members of the board of directors.
That I will abide by the provisions of the agreement for the establishment of the African Export-Import Bank.
That I will abide by the provisions of the agreement for the establishment of the African Export-Import Bank.
Its charter and the rules and regulations, and that I will discharge my duties and functions as laid down therein with loyalty.
Each charter and rules and regulations, and that I will discharge my duties and functions as laid down therein with loyalty,
discretion and conscience, and I will regulate my conduct as president with the interest of the bank only in view.
And I will regulate my conduct as president with the interest of the bank only in view.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
The new president of the Africa Export-Import Bank, Benedict Oramah, delivers his acceptance speech.
I declare before you today my full commitment and loyalty to an institution that gave me back my life. I put myself at the full disposal of an institution that did not abandon me at my hour of need. I step in as president with courage behind me, vision before me, loyalty and determination inside me, and the grace of God around me. Propelled by all these values, you have my assurance, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that you have many plans and that none of them is a plan for failure. We may make mistakes like all humans do, but be assured that like the phoenix, the mythical Egyptian bird that rose from his ashes, will always rise and learn from our mistakes. Mr. Chairman, honorable ministers, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the African story I will soon recount is a wake-up call to all of us. It justifies the need to act, and it brings to the fore the urgency of now. Many of you who follow the continent's economic history, and are so lucidly displayed today in the poetry you listened to, most certainly have pondered why a continent which was so far ahead of developing Asia, including China, in the 1970s, has suddenly fallen so far behind. Why Africa's trade, which was almost 120% of Asia's in the 1970s, has much declined such that today it is only 9%, making the continent a marginal player in the global scheme of things. You will wonder why ours is a continent whose great promise has become an intractable mirage. Yet, we all know that a mirage is an endless target to pursue. Propelled by all these values, you have my assurance, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, that you have many plans and that none of them is a plan for failure.
Benedict Oramah is the second Nigerian national to serve as president of Afrexim Bank. Some top Nigerian business leaders are quite pleased with his appointment.
I see him as an African, and this is a very great moment for Africa. And listening to his speech, it's quite uplifting and encouraging. I'm very, very happy for this moment. It seems to me that Africa, under Oke's leadership, will definitely make some progress. He understands the fundamentals. He understands how we need to drive the economy, African economy. He also understands what others have done and how they achieve what they've done, and he seems to have a sense of urgency.
Dr. Oramah has always been a fantastic supporter for Africa. Not only that, a pioneer staff of the institution itself from its founding fathers. So it only gives a better position to a much qualified and better qualified person that understands the construct and the dynamics of the institution, that can only make it work better to serve all of Africa and most of us, the ever-growing enterprise and entrepreneurship on the continent.
I think it's a fantastic appointment. He said wonderful things about promoting intra-regional African trade, which is absolutely essential, and promoting links in infrastructure between African countries, and trying to get Africans to add more value to their commodities, looking at the trajectory of Asian development and how we can also catch up. So I think it's a wonderful appointment. I have total faith in Dr. Oramah's ability to deliver on his mandate?
I think Dr. Oramah is an asset to the bank. I mean, we all listen to the speech he delivered. There's a lot of expectation. He's an experienced banker. He's a honest, and he has a lot of respect within the community. So I can tell you that he's a blessing to the institution, and his emergence will bring more confidence in both within the member countries and those who are looking forward to joining as shareholders of Afrexim Bank.
Former president of Afrexim Bank, Jean-Louis Ekra, believes he leaves a good legacy behind and is quite confident the new president is well equipped for the task ahead.
When I took over the bank in 2005, after having been for 10 years the executive vice president under the pioneer president of the bank, Mr. Christopher Edordu, the total balance sheet of the bank was around $500 million. Now I'm leaving a bank with over $6 billion. It is an overwhelming feeling to have been able to grow the institution over that period. My predecessor did his part, I did my part. I hope and I'm confident that Dr. Oramah, who is a man from the house, a man who has been in the bank for the past 22 years, I hope he will be able to carry on that challenge.
The Director General of the Arab Bank for Economic Development, Sidi Tar, and the Chief Executive Officer of Africa 50 are quite optimistic about the future of intra-African trade and urge African countries to promote the export of value-added commodities.
In Africa, we are able to go from vision to action and to go from ideas to implementations. And Afrexim Bank is really a good example of African capacity to make things happen.
We will get more impact and change the face of Africa in terms of infrastructure, in terms of industrialization, in terms of integration. As Dr. Adesina said, the new president of African Development Bank, we need to light up Africa, we need to feed Africa, we need to industrialize Africa, we need to integrate Africa, and we need to improve the life of Africans.
The existence of multilateral institutions like the Afrexim Bank and Africa Development Bank has helped provide much-needed capital to businesses and governments on the continent. This is discussed in a short seminar themed Relevance of Regional Financial Institution.
It's a big issue. It's access to long-term financing. Up to 2014, most of the money that we were raising on the market, we used to raise it on BRVM, which is our local stock exchange. But unfortunately, it was really difficult to get access to more than 5 years.
My colleagues from the Africa 50 are also here. I think we are having, this is a huge success of almost $820 million only for the Class A of shareholders, means member states, and we hope to respond also to your question to Class B, shareholders, which means in fact African financial institutions, regional institutions, which we hope will be part of the initiative.
Benedict Oramah, a Nigerian national, has been with Afrexim Bank for 22 years. Before his new appointment, he was the bank's executive vice president in charge of business development and corporate banking since 2008. Benedict Oramah believes trade among African countries can be significantly increased. To help achieve this, the bank is currently recapitalizing to meet the growing need for trade finance.
We estimate that there are funds in Africa carrying more than $700 billion of investable long-term funds. These are funds that can be tapped to continue to increase our capital. Our goal is to focus on this. We're not going to relent. We're going to make sure we build the necessary capital base to enable us deal with the environmental issues within our geographies, and also to enable us efficiently pursue our different strategy. We are also collaborating more with the African Development Bank, which is participating into our risk, thereby giving us capital relief. We are also in discussions with credit insurers on how to make our callable capital count for us in the estimation of the capital we hold. So we're doing everything in all fronts.
The Africa Export-Import Bank, since its establishment in October 1993, has approved almost $35 billion in credit facilities to African businesses. Nearly $4.5 billion was approved in 2014 alone. 37 African countries are currently members of the bank, and Afrexim Bank hopes to increase this number in the coming years. The new president, Benedict Oramah, says he will continue where his predecessor left off, ensuring that intra-African trade remains the cornerstone of the bank's activities. He believes African economies that trade among themselves are more prosperous than those who don't. That's a wrap on this special coverage of the inauguration of the headquarters building of the Africa Export-Import Bank and the investiture of Dr. Benedict Oramah as president of Afrexim Bank. Thank you for watching. I'm Esther Awuni.